Dom from Nothing But Thieves. Welcome to the noisy green room. Thanks to the road and thanks to your beautiful background, but it is such a pleasure to have you with me today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I have to get this out of the way up front. Obviously, we have a lot to talk about in Nothing But Thieves land, but I am a giant fan. One of my favorite live music memories from way back was, I think, back in 2016, you guys came out here. It was about this time of year, actually, and you did a little Splendour in the Grass sideshow in Sydney, and
Yeah.
it was just an incredible night. I think I held hands with a stranger when Lover Please Stay came on. Everyone was just having this bizarre connecting moment. So I just have
And
to
that's
tell
how
you that
COVID
was,
started, from that guy.
yeah, oh yeah.
That's
But
funny. Oh, that's very sweet of you, though. Thank you.
yeah, it's just, I mean, we all have such a love affair with you guys here. And I mean, I'm not just saying that because I'm chatting to you, but it does help. It helps that we have a nice connection already here. But a lot has obviously happened in between that time and now for Nothing But Thieves. I mean, you guys have released Broken Machine, Moral Panic, and lucky for us, you guys weren't done on the Moral Panic theme because we have Moral Panic 2, your new EP, literally in the world very, very soon. How does it feel to be releasing this EP in the state of the world and also just in this stage of the Nothing But Thieves story?
That's a fantastic question, Tiana, and I'm glad you asked it. Do you know what? It's great to be releasing music is the fundamental thread here. But I would say it's been very strange for us because normally we would put out a record like Moral Panic, which we did on the latter half of last year, and we would normally hit the road, do tours all around the world, and not see our families for a couple of years, and then start writing again, record, and then repeat. And this just put a complete roadblock in kind of how we do things and all of our plans. Um, but what that did do was kind of like shake us up and loosen us up a bit. So when we were sat there going, well, we should be on the road now, we kind of used that time to start writing, and we weren't too bothered about it. We weren't like there's a deadline for new record. There was none of that. It was sort of there's time to kill. You're not going anywhere. You have nothing better to do, so just relax and write some music. And that's kind of how the birth of Moral Panic started. And yeah, from there we just carried on writing tunes, managed to get them recorded, which we did in a remote recording session with a producer, which I'll speak to you more about later. But yeah, really, really bizarre. I obviously want a gig. All the boys are hungry to get on the road again, but you've just got to be patient as everyone else has been for the last couple of years, basically.
Yeah, I really like with that too, even though it is a continuation of Moral Panic, like this all kind of did come about after it. It's not like anything was like a leftover or left out or cut out essentially from the
Yeah.
original album. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we've definitely had it before where we've finished the record and there were some songs that we felt weren't quite right for the main body of work, but as deluxe tracks they could be their own thing. Whereas for Moral Panic 2, these were all brand new, fresh songs with developed ideas from the Moral Panic theme, and we had kind of learned a lot from that process of recording Moral Panic. So we were using a load of new techniques that we'd like use in terms of production. So it had this kind of like it trail on from the recording process of the album. So that's why it feels like there's a cohesiveness between them. Despite the fact they were recorded over a year apart from each other, it was more we were still to us it was very fresh. You hold on to the album for so long before it's released. But it didn't feel like there were heaps of time. I just said heaps. I've never said that. That's so Australian, isn't it? Heaps of
Yeah, oh,
time
I love it.
between
You're more
releases.
Australian than I am.
I know. I can't believe I said that. Can you like bleep that out or something?
Yeah, I'm sure we can. I'm sure we'll go back. But I think what's really interesting too, like I know you have kind of mentioned it right just there, like with how you kind of had a bit of a change up in production and that too. And like obviously you've got the undeniable Nothing But Thief sound coming through in it, but there's like a little bit of like industrial fuzz on If I Were You and a bit of like hip hop on Future Proof. And can you help me pronounce it properly? Saying it's the French one.
You are so close. Scenarion.
Scenarion. Oh, it sounds much nicer when you say it.
Oh, it really does.
Broad
And
accent.
I have a dreadful. I wasn't even going to try and do it in a French accent because I would worry that it would offend people. But it sounds even worse in my normal accent. So, but yeah, Scenarion is the kind of comically heavy song, which was a new thing for us. And we sat in the room together and just thought, what happens if we try and write the heaviest thing we've ever written? And we did it, and we were at the end of it, we're like, this is exciting. When we play it back, we're like loving it, and it became less of a joke the longer we were sat with it, and we ended up recording it. So that was kind of how that one started. And in the others that you mentioned, Future Proof, we spent about we spent months refining the production on it. We really went in in on how the drums were going to sound. There were lots of I would say more like you mentioned hip hop production techniques, like using 808 drums and layering that sort of stuff in, and how we processed the vocals wasn't a traditional rock song of just distorting one vocal down the middle of the song. It was like loads of different layers and how the harmonies work with each other. So yeah, it was kind of merging those genres in that song and really spending a time on the sound design and making sure all the nuances were right, because you can do hip hop and rock really wrong, I think, sometimes. And I think we've got it wrong before when we've done demos, and I listen back and I'm like, that's on the wrong side of the line. So we have to spend a lot of time on that balancing act of, walking the tightrope of rock versus hip hop. So hopefully we got it right on that song.
Well, I'm biased, like I do think you did, but it's really interesting with those different flavors. And I do love that you did say that it was your heavier song. I've already forgotten it. Say no rain.
Scenarion.
Damn it. So
So close.
close, but so far. But I am actually a very, very not so secret heavy fan. And I would actually give my fictional firstborn child to see that one live in action. So like I love obviously, but it's so nice to have those different shades of you guys. Like you guys have always had many, many strings to your bow sonically. So it's really nice to see you guys explore this and yeah, just flesh ideas out with each release you do.
I mean, that's kind of the benefit, I think, of having written our first record with quite a diverse sound, of having, like you said, a slow ballad like Lover Please Stay that is kind of in the vein of Jeff Buckley or Radiohead and things like that. And then you have songs on the other side of the spectrum on that album, like Ban All the Music, that has touches of like Zeppelin riffs and things like that. So we gave ourselves this kind of wide breadth of where they're going to go next. Whereas I think if you have one sound and it's pigeonholed there in your first record, you can kind of scare people by going, actually, we're going to mix it up for a record too. Whereas because we started like that, we could kind of like branch off and it wasn't freaking anyone out, and we could bring in influences of synths and electronic drums and different genres, and it didn't seem like a weird move from us. And it keeps stuff so interesting because we're not locked into like, oh, it's got to be two guitars, a bass, and drums like every time. We can just do kind of what we want now, and the freedom there is fantastic. And I think we wouldn't have it any other way. It's such a fun way to write as a band.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing because you kind of did set that scene so early on, and in a way, like you said, so many fans can get quite attached to a band's particular style when they first start out. So you kind of, yeah, geniusly set the tone really, really
It
well.
was it was definitely an accident. Let's not say
Love it.
genius there, but I would say that we there's a benefit of having a vocalist like Connor, where you can throw him on any song, and he is kind of the common thread between it, and he's the guy gluing all the songs together. That really helps, and I think not in all songs, but there's generally like a darker undertone to the sound of the music, with Connor sort of floating over the top of it, and that juxtaposition is quite a common thread in a lot of Nothing But Thieves music. And yeah, like I say, that teamed with Connor's insane vocal is what ties it all together, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think speaking of your team, I mean, obviously you are resident guitarist and you also jump on keyboard, piano, production duties, like God knows what else. You're probably doing a million other things in the background as well. But like, do you love kind of balancing that creative and more technical side as well with it? I mean, I know you teamed up with Rich Costy on this as well and had just an insane team on Moral Panic too. Like, do you love that equal, like how you've got the stylistic balance? Is it nice to have that little, flip between the two in this respect?
Yeah, for sure. I think I have a real passion for production and even maybe mixing to a degree. It's something that I've learned from the start of the band. I didn't have it sort of. We were still in school actually before the band was a thing, so I was very young. So I've definitely had to learn it as I go. But it's been nice looking back at where we all were actually as writers and me as a producer 7 or 8 years ago when the band kind of started, and seeing how we've all developed. And I personally love being able to produce, because the problem we had on the first record, I wouldn't say it was a problem, but the thing we were struggling with was we had ideas in our head and we couldn't bring them out. We couldn't record them. We didn't know how to get certain sounds. And through just sheer trying and research and trial and error, we managed to get better at writing, and I got better at production. So now it feels like we have this palette of sounds that we know where to draw from to get them. I've got like I'm just my list of gear and pedals and synths is just ever growing to the point where I need to get a bigger room to get in, because I'm just slowly getting cramped in by all this stuff. But it's yeah, I do love it, and I couldn't see it working another way by going to a producer with like a bunch of songs we recorded on like an iPhone voice note and being like, right, can you make this sound however you want to make it sound? That would kind of scare me. But I get so involved in the production, such when we're writing, that I feel like it's almost part of the song, that um, it would feel strange to strip it right back down and just start again. I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of how the process has developed, and yeah, I couldn't see it working any other way, to be honest, at this point.
And I think there is such a significant stamp on all these songs. I mean, it can happen with some bands when they're working with someone outside their team, but it does really reflect in what we hear on the other side. So, yeah, it's an interesting mix of energies and dynamics, but it just comes across so fluidly. It's incredible.
I'm glad you think so, and I know you mentioned Rich Costi, who is obviously an amazing producer and mixer. It's the first time we'd worked with Rich, and unfortunately we had to do things remotely. So he's based in the US, and we couldn't get him to fly over because of COVID. So he was tuning into our studio sessions every day and having to give like feedback over the web, which was crazy. And it kind of worked, but it's not like having someone in the room with you. So there was a lot of after the fact post production, and him and I just going back and forth on the sessions and what we recorded, and me adding things in and sending them over and things like that. So it was quite a, I would say, like, not even in a bad way, a detached recording process from like what we did in the studio to what happened afterwards and finishing it off. But it meant that we had perspective. It meant that we recorded and then had a few weeks after to sort of live with things, decide if we like them, what needs to be done, and just remotely back and forth all the ideas. So it was a really interesting process. And Rich is just a mad mixer. Like some of them, we would get the mixes back, and I would just smile. I didn't. Normally, when I listen back to a mix, I'm being hyper analytical, and I'm conscious of all the details being in there. And with this, I would click play, and I would forget that that is what I was meant to be doing, and just be enjoying it. And that that's you're in good hands when that's your reaction.
Yeah, 100%. And like, it's just an incredible, like, arsenal behind all of it. Like his track record alone is phenomenal. And then you throw you guys into the mix. I mean, how could it not be amazing? But
Oh yeah, you would hope so, but there's always we still have imposter syndrome. We still sit there and we're like, have we ever done this before? All of us have it, and yeah, that's why it's quite nice to have someone like Rich, like at the helm, just sort of making sure that everything goes to plan. And we love that outside influence. If we're not sure on something, we can ask someone and kind of get that third party opinion, and you're going to trust them, because, like you say, with a track record like his, he's got Rage Against the Machine and Muse and Biffy Clyro, and they're just a couple of the names. Like, he's been working with the big dogs of rock and roll, so you can just kick back and go, we're in safe hands.
absolutely 100%. And I know that obviously, as you touched on, it's not an ideal situation to be doing a lot of this remotely. And I guess as well, as we're in 2021, stuff has kind of gotten slightly better and gotten slightly worse. I know in the UK, you guys have actually just dropped lockdown in England. Like, it's all kind of become a bit of a
Yeah,
free for all. Like, how is that impacting you guys from your plans at this point in time? Like, is it nice to be able to consider live shows with 3D fans after what we've
yeah,
gone through?
100%. I think everyone's probably a little bit sick of working from home. Even us, we have to do it a bit. And I think, obviously, in the back of my mind, I'm I'm slightly skeptical that everything is going to go ahead. They've lifted the lockdown, but the cases are skyrocketing and maybe more than ever. But luckily, it seems like less people are being hospitalized, so there is a silver lining to it. Without getting too into COVID, because I'm sure everyone's sick of it by now, we just want to make sure we can play gigs as soon as possible in the safest way possible. So we're really, really just like I keep tabs on the news constantly, just waiting for like events on, news on events and the entertainment space, and just making sure that you know, as soon as we can play, we will. So we're playing a tour in October at the moment, meant to be headlining the O2 Arena, which is like pretty much the biggest venue in London until you go to stadiums. And that is a dream for us as little kids. We would get, when we get the train up from Essex to London, which is from our hometown, you would see this huge dome on the way into town. And I remember just thinking, like, if we ever got to play that, it'd be a dream. And we did get to play it with Muse. We supported them a few years ago. And the fact that we're now headlining it, I still have that like feeling of like a little kid just being like this. And I don't believe it's happening. And that's not because of COVID or anything. I literally don't believe, like, aside from that, that our small band of little wormy kids from Essex have managed to get into that big arena.
Well, I think that's what I love the most about your backstory. I mean, I think especially you yourself, like I believe that you picked up with a guitar and then I read that you kind of stuck with it to prove your mum wrong, that you would stick with it kind of thing. And suddenly you're
Yeah,
going across the road to another school, you meet Connor, next minute, just casually, supporting Muse and now
it
looking
does
at all of this
feel like
again.
that. Yeah, it does feel like it was only a few years ago we were still in school. And I guess it's kind of a whirlwind of stuff with, I guess what lockdown has taught me was like it, like I said about this kind of roadblock into our plans. It kind of put a roadblock into our lives in that we'd always been on the road for, and even when we weren't, we were recording and we'd be doing it abroad or something. So we'd been away from home for maybe 5, 6, maybe even 7 years. Um, so putting that roadblock in kind of stopped us, and it's made you kind of like have this like take stock of events, appreciate what's happened. It's made me enjoy being at home before. Normally, I'd get itchy feet. I'd like to be home for a few days and be like, I'm bored now. But I've learned to love it, and there's definitely have been some benefits from it and some sort of positive outcomes for me personally. So yeah, you definitely do look back at it and have a moment of like, wow, how have we got here? And I genuinely don't believe it sometimes. It's crazy.
It's crazy. I think like it's in a way as much it's challenged us in a lot of ways, but I think it has forced us to kind of look back. And I guess because you guys, it's almost been like this rocket literally from that moment to now. And like I even loved reading like you speaking of live music, like you've had so many incredible moments and you've even broken up a fight at a festival. Like, I saw you crowd surf to stop a fight. Like
Yeah, that was
that's
crazy. We
yeah.
we were we were in America, and we don't have fights at our gigs, but they only seem to occur in America if we do, and it's bizarre. I don't know what it is. Maybe they're used to smoking weed more than they are drinking, but these guys were like proper drunk, and I saw a fight breaking out, and the security weren't doing anything. And then someone got hit who wasn't in the fight, and I remember just being like, "Someone's going to get seriously hurt here." Um, and I was like trying to get attention from like my techs on the side of the stage and like the security, and I was like trying to continue play the gig, but also be like, someone needs to go and sort that out. And no one did, so I just ended up putting my guitar down and jumping off of the visor into the stage. And stupidly, I didn't realize how big these guys were. When you're on stage, you're taller than everyone. When you're actually on the ground at the same level as them, they're still 6'6" and you're still 5'10". So I remember like looking at this guy and being like, "This is a huge mistake." He didn't realize I was in the band, so he started like wrestling me. And then the band stopped playing, and like the lights came up. Oh, it was so classic. And then they escorted this guy out, and he was actually outside the venue afterwards and was apologizing to everyone, and he was like explaining why it was a misunderstanding, and it actually was like, not the worst thing in the world, but yeah, I won't forget that one in a rush. I don't know what I was thinking, but if no one else was going to sort it out, I think I had to at that point.
It's pretty incredible. And I think like that was my question, like A, who fights during a Nothing But Thieves set? But like, yeah, that explains a lot, but also like what a wild memory. Like, are there any other memories that stick out as much as that? That seems like a hard one to top.
Yeah, that was quite a crazy one. Yeah, there was one actually. We were in Japan for the first time. We were headlining in Tokyo, and we're backstage, and it's about 5 minutes before we're about to go on. And I was saying to my tour manager, I was like, "No one's in the venue yet. Like, I thought we'd sold tickets, but no one's here." And he was like, "No, we've opened the doors like an hour ago. People were here, and I couldn't see from the green room like outside, but I couldn't hear anyone there." So I was really, really worried. I was like, obviously no one's come in, or there's been a problem, or something's like stopping the gig happening. And I walked on stage, and there was a full room of people. All the fans are in there, but when they get to a gig, they're so respectful. They stand there in complete silence, and they don't say anything. They're just waiting for the gig to go ahead. It was unreal. So we would play the song, play the first song, they would cheer, and then when Connor was talking, they would be dead quiet. And like culturally, they're such a respectful bunch of people that they just want to make sure that they're not talking over you or shouting or anything. They just want to listen to the music and absorb it. And it was the most incredible gig I've ever played. It was unreal. And conversely, with that, the following time we went to Japan, we were playing Summer Sonic, which is this huge festival they have in Tokyo and Osaka, and we played on the Saturday, and that evening Radiohead were headlining, and it was the first time I'd been able to see Radiohead live, and they're one of my favourite bands. And we had the same experience of dead quiet, but in a stadium, and it was the best setting to watch Radiohead because you could hear every nuance. You could hear the band talking to each other on stage in the stadium, which is unreal. So yeah, I think that was a real shock and a real pleasure to be able to like experience that firsthand. And it's so funny when you go back to the UK and everyone's just like, throwing piss on each other and stuff.
I hope that we were a bit better behaved for you in Australia, but yeah, we're pretty rowdy bunch, us lot.
One of the
But
best Australian gigs we played was in Brisbane. First time we went there, we ended up getting into the crowd for the last gig, and we were pulling all the instruments into the crowd, and we were like playing in the mosh pit, and people were like falling over me and like trying to strum my guitar for me. And the song obviously fell apart because we were just like getting like pulled everywhere. But it was like one of the craziest gigs we've ever had. It was so fun.
I love that. That's very on brand. I'm actually from Queensland myself, so I may very
Nice.
well have been there. I'm sorry if
There
I
you
didn't touch
go.
my guitar in advance. Whoops.
Yeah, yeah.
Holding hands. What's next, God?
Honestly, it was so good. We love. Oh, it's making me nostalgic wanting to play all these gigs again, and I almost need to stop talking about it. Oh my
Okay,
god.
let's move on then. Well, I was going to ask you a question somewhat adjacent, but it's taking you backstage. So, because I've dragged you onto the green room today, when you can
Sure.
get on the road and get touring, what is an item that you will want backstage with you in your green room to ensure you get through the show in one piece?
That's really good. That's a really good question. I guess um, I can go either answer this sensibly or not. Maybe I'll do both.
Yeah, let's do both. Let's do it.
We I normally play after like a beer or two because I get slightly nervous even still. Like I think once you have a beer, you kind of your nerves settle. I wouldn't say it has to be a beer, but it's just something that has a slight alcohol content to ease the nerves a bit. That's kind of key for me personally. We also, this is so nerdy, but we had this entertainment system built, which is a huge flight case with a flat screen TV in it, speakers either side of the TV, and then like PlayStation and Nintendo and all this stuff. And the crew wheel it into the dressing room, take the front panel off, and it reveals this like really nerdy gaming system. And we listen to music on it, and you can connect your Bluetooth and all that. And that is like having a living room everywhere you go. So when we got that built, we were like, this is life now. Sometimes you're playing FIFA and you're like, we've got to be on stage in 5 minutes, but we've got to also win the game. So
We have to, yeah, why are they late? It's technical reasons,
yeah,
definitely.
technical
Technical
reasons. Yeah,
reasons.
it's gone to penalties. That's why.
Yeah. That's not nerdy. That's probably the best thing I've ever heard because I finally got a Nintendo Switch just before lockdown. And like I tell you,
Yes,
like while you're on stage, if you see a blonde girl with glasses backstage holding a Nintendo Switch plugging in, it's not me.
you're gonna have to come and play Mario Kart because we get very competitive.
You'll see the worst aspects of my personality come out during Mario Kart, and I will apologize profusely
It's
afterwards.
okay. I think that's almost what the game is designed to do. So it'll
Oh,
be you and
nice.
everyone else playing. Don't worry.
Fantastic. Well, I love all of this, but for now, I know that everyone is just so excited to have this incredible new music out with Moral Panic 2 coming into the world. And he's hoping it's not too long till we can see you, but doesn't matter how long, we'll all be here ready and waiting.
Fingers crossed, we will be back as soon as possible.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dom. It's such a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Tiana. That was great. Thank you.
Okay.
Cheers.
The Green Room with Tiana Speter is a podcast from the Handshake Agency Network, produced by Tiana Speter and Andrew Mast, with Pharrell D'Souza and Henry Gibson providing research. Recorded and engineered by Zig Parker, executive producer Craig Treweek.